welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host is Justin Baker, and on today's show, we are going to be going through the top 10 San Jose Sharks of all time as we continue our best players of all time from each NHL franchise. And if you want to go back and listen, we're almost to about half now through all the teams throughout the league. So we're doing the San Jose Sharks on this one. And the next ranking we do will be the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so, if you're a Leafs guy, stay tuned for that. That'll be a fun one.
Bet you're looking forward to that.
I am looking forward to that one. And Leafs being my team and all. But San Jose Sharks are a really interesting top 10. Mostly because it's really difficult to nail down San Jose Sharks players that played before the lockout. Like, if you were on the San Jose Sharks before the lockout, you there wasn't a whole lot of, the superstars on the team other than maybe a couple. Whereas now, after the post lockout, I feel like that's where a lot of my list has come from. And so they're just, it's for a team that's been around for almost 30 years now. It seems like, right, 1991.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's crazy to think that it's almost 30 years, but
and I would say that the majority of my players have played on the Sharks in the last 10 years. Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, this was a franchise that starting off in 91 was just, terrible. They were almost as bad as the 70s Washington Capitals, their first inaugural season.
They were, but by the time you hit 94, they actually went to the second round.
Well, yeah, they got better real quick.
They beat the Red Wings.
They did, which I still remember that Osgood flub. Yeah. They got much better real quick. I mean, they're the team that drafted superstars like Ray Whitney. They even had Artis Urbe in goal. They had some quality names in there really after the first season. So,
all right. Well, with that said, let's talk about the guys who just missed your list.
The old just missed.
The old just missed.
I put in a guy who early on for this team was, man, I don't know how to describe him to me, what he means to me, because this is a guy who was part of Red Wings folklore in the 90s. Igor Larionov made my just missed. And he was kind of like, for a team that wasn't very good, he came in and he was steady for a few years.
Well, he only played 97 games.
He did, yeah.
So about a year and a half.
But this is in a time where they didn't have really any quality players, and he was a guy who was a quality guy.
82 points in those 97 games.
I think he made one All-Star appearance for the team, too. Yeah, Erik Karlsson, another one that made my just missed. However, I will preface that and say, ask me next year or maybe 2 years from now, he'll be on the top 10. Yeah. And then last but not least, Tomas Hertl.
Okay, yeah. I thought about Hertl for a second. He could be in there if he kind of cements himself as this two-way forward, which it seemed like when he came into the league, he was going to be more this flashy speedster of a center, but he's turned more into a two-way guy. And I think, he does have a shot at moving in here, but he missed my list along with Danny Heatley.
Okay,
he misses my list. Danny Heatley had a couple good years for San Jose. He's actually fifth all time in points per game. So, and really, there's only a couple guys who played significant amount of games ahead of him. So, if you played more than 52 games for the Sharks, he's third all-time in points per game, 146 and 162 games. However, I think there was just a lot of decline that happened for Danny Heatley. He had a couple good years, and it kind of all went down the tubes. And that's kind of what I think about when I think about Danny Heatley with the Sharks. He had an 82-point year and then a 64-point year the following year. Then he leaves for Minnesota. It felt like there was something going on with the Sharks at that time, and he just really didn't fit, which is why he gets dealt to Minnesota. So he misses my list along with Jonathan Chichu, who I think has the most goals scored in one season for the Sharks.
Thanks to Joe Thornton.
Like 100% thanks to Joe Thornton. Yeah. I want to say the following year he scored 8 goals or something like that.
It was stupid. He also leads the franchise in hat tricks too, thanks to Joe Thornton.
all in that 1 year. I mean, in 440 games, he had 165 goals. And in that one season, in 82 games, he had 56 goals. So, I mean, he did actually have a couple good, like he had a 37 goal season the year after that, then 23, then it went down to 12, and it just really disappeared after that. And then he just toiled around. Like, he went from a 56 goal season in 05-06, and in 2009, 2010, he played like a quarter of the year in the AHL, and then he was never seen from again.
Yeah, and
went to the KHL, and that's, he retired a few years ago. But.
Yeah, I thought about putting him on my just miss too, but you think about that sort of fact, right? A guy, if you look throughout history, there's probably nobody who's ever gone from a 50-plus goal season and then within a matter of a few years an AHL player. Never happened in the history of the game. I mean, clearly that's...
outside of like maybe the mid-'80s.
Well, yeah, I think that was... I don't know, actually.
I don't know, yeah.
I would like to look that up, so... Yeah, tweet it to us if you know. I would be interested to hear.
Quite the fall from grace. As well, a couple defensemen that I tossed around, like Dan Boyle and Mike Rathje, some of these guys that were a solid defenseman for them at one time, and Doug Wilson, who was the Sharks' first captain, but I just couldn't put them on the list. So
couldn't
do it. So with that said, your number 10, sir.
My number 10 is Vincent Damphousse.
Okay.
Or as I always call him, Damp House.
Damp House.
Yeah. Not really sure how to pronounce his name, to be quite honest.
I'm a damp house. That's how it goes.
All right, I think we need to stop the show and start over again. 10th all-time in points for this franchise. Only 300-ish games played, so pretty
385, almost 400.
Okay, yeah, did I read that wrong? I'm sorry.
385, 289 points in 385
Yeah,
games.
Pretty decent point per game average. I mean, at 3 points every 4 games, you can't hate that. And again, this is a guy who played in the late 90s, early 2000s in a time where really, like you talked about it, prior to the lockout, there really wasn't much superstar power on a Sharks team. So
yeah, I mean, and they actually did okay in 99, 2000, in 01, 02, and 03, 04. They made it out of the first round in 03-04. They actually made it to the conference finals.
Right, yeah.
So
starting to see the rise of this franchise.
And Vincent Damphousse had some great playoffs where, I mean, he had in 03-04, and this is in that was his final year. He retires after that year. Because the lockout comes, and I think he just called it a day.
Sure.
He had 14 points in 17 playoff games.
Can't hate it.
7 of those goals. So yeah, he definitely showed up in the playoffs, and Vincent Damphousse, I would agree. He probably, if the Montreal Canadiens didn't have so many, like if they weren't so storied, like he would probably be on, maybe like for what he did in Montreal too, he could be on, if he had done that, let's say with like the Carolina Hurricanes, he'd be in the top 10 for Carolina too. I mean, he actually played all over the place and did really well. I mean, he had a 94-point season with Toronto. He had an 89-point season with the Oilers. He had 3 90-plus point seasons with the Habs, and then he had, he was with the Sharks towards the end of his career, but it was also during a time where everyone was struggling to get points. So to have a 70-point season in the 2000 season, that's pretty solid for Vincent Damphousse. So he's my number 9.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I agree. Definitely having him on this list is I think that he was a part of that first wave of the Sharks beginning to make a good push. He was brought in to kind of cement that lineup. Played a little bit with Patrick Marleau when Marleau was first in the Sharks.
Very true. Yeah,
as a younger man. And my number 10 though is a guy who you had on your just missed. It's Erik Karlsson.
Wow. Okay. A lot of love for
putting him
barely
on my
a season.
List. Even though he had a down season, I mean, he still had 45 points in 53 games as a defenseman. So we're not talking a shabby season. I mean, that puts him 7th all time in points per game as a Shark. And the only defenseman ahead of him is Brian Campbell, who played a whopping 20 games for the Sharks and had 19 points.
Came in trade deadline.
Yeah. So I'm putting Erik Karlsson on here with also the knowledge that he's going to continue to perform and
yeah, he'll
really
be great for this team.
And I mean, I'll say this: if he like, let's say he didn't sign with the Sharks. Obviously, I wouldn't have him on this list. But I'm putting him on here because it's like, okay, it's a foregone conclusion. This guy's going to do something special. So,
sure, yeah.
So he's my number 10. Dom Foos is my number 9. And who's yours?
My number 9 is a string of defensemen that I'm about to go on a run with. First being Dan Boyle.
Okay, so you do have Dan Boyle.
I do have Dan Boyle on this list just because I think more. I grew up watching this guy in the prime of, I wouldn't say the prime of his career. That was definitely Tampa, but he came in the latter stages of his career, but was still very productive for a team that didn't have a lot of superstar talent on the back end. Not like they do today, anyways. Yeah, a stretch of 3 straight seasons with 50-plus points and follows that up with a 48-point season. So very solid. He's third all-time in points for defensemen. And to me, Dan Boyle was just a rock-solid guy, and he was a very good top-line option guy to have on a team. And he showed why night in and night out, played very well during his tenure.
Okay. I'll go my number 8.
Okay, give it to me.
My number 8 is the only goaltender to make this list, and it is Yevgeny Nabokov.
Okay.
So, Nabokov has by far the most wins in this organization. He has 290, I think it was 293. He also has 50 shutouts. So, but 10% of his games played, he had a shutout. That's pretty solid, averaging 8 shutouts a year. And he, little known fact, has scored a goal.
Yes, he has. Yeah, not too many goalies can put that on their resume.
I don't think we've had a goalie on our list that has scored a goal yet. Unless you had Chris. Did you have Chris Osgood on your?
I cannot remember for the life of me. Yeah. I have a terrible memory, but
that's
why I write everything down.
So I mean, by far the most wins, and he put up some really nice numbers: a 2.39 goals against and a 9.12 save percentage. So Evgeny Nabokov always maybe left a little bit to be desired in the playoffs, but he did play so many games for the Sharks, 563 games, and the playoffs, I'd say for the most part, not really his fault. He did have a couple kind of struggle years, but I mean he was there for a couple conference final runs, and
he was always good enough. I thought in the playoffs,
he was good enough.
Yeah,
I mean It also, I think that Nabokov was the reason the Sharks didn't win those years. I mean, you look at the years that they went to the conference finals. 03-04, they lost to the Calgary Flames, who were so good.
They were very good.
That team was.
I think that was
because Tampa Bay
won the cup. But I was going to say, I think that's the year though in 04. Where he robbed, I can't remember who it was on Dallas with that glove save just right against the post.
Yes.
Just one of the better saves I've seen in a long time. And then if you haven't seen it yet lately either, go take a peek. Oh, man, why can I not remember his name for the life of me? Just made this ridiculous. Yaroslav Halak made a ridiculous behind-the-back save. Just crazy. Go look it up. But
yeah, that 03-04 run, though, he 171 goals against and a 9.35 save percentage. So just out of this world. He's my number 8. And my only goalie he's the only one I even slightly considered.
Yeah, so same. Although maybe I thought about Mike Vernon. Just kidding.
Mike Vernon.
Yeah, most people forget he actually came on this team after he won a cup with Detroit.
And Kelly Rudy.
That's right. Yeah, you forget about him from L.A. Oh, man. Okay, my number 8.
Rob Blake also played on the Sharks.
He did. He
was their captain for the year he was there.
It's too funny. The 90s.
That was the late 2000s.
Was it?
It was like 2009.
Oh, my gosh. Where have I been? Okay, well, number 8 for me, probably the most underrated defenseman I've seen in a long time. Pickles. Vlasic Edward.
And Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Yeah.
He's my number 7.
Okay.
So, I have him just a little bit higher. I have him ahead of Nabokov because I do feel like he is one of the reasons that the Sharks are as good as they are.
I would absolutely agree. And I think, you can see the love, just how good of a defensive defenseman he is because that run where Canada, with the Olympic gold, man, they put him with Doughty just on that top line for a reason. And because he's just that good of a shutdown guy. And it's no secret. I think, you can gripe about his contract and the money he gets paid, but he shuts teams down, and it shows year in and year out.
Plus, he is maybe the best nickname in the NHL right now.
Really? Yeah. Maybe that or the bread
Pickles
man.
or the bread man.
Yeah.
Yes. Ironically, they could go on each other. I guess
today I was
go on the bread.
I had dill pickled flavored popcorn. Probably the most disgusting thing I've ever had, and I don't like pickles, so that
sounds awful.
Yeah, everybody. Ironically, though, it was
although pickle chips are quite good.
Well,
if you ever Canada, they have pickle chips.
Okay, never heard.
They taste pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass. Well, anyways, moving on.
Okay, so he's your number 8.
True story.
And my number 7 is Vlasic. So who is your number 7?
Evgeny Nabokov.
Okay, all right. So we just have him,
and maybe it's a little bit of love, tip of the cap for the goaltender, because again, he was just so rock solid for that team for so long. And you look at all the other goaltenders they've had throughout this history, he just added stability on the back end where nobody else had done that before in this franchise. So
it's true. And they did have good goaltenders and goaltenders who had good seasons. I mean, don't forget this team had Mika Kiprusoff.
They did. Yeah. And they had Antti Niemi. I mean, they've had some goalies.
Niemi gets traded there after he wins a cup in Chicago.
Right, but he was pretty solid for the team for a few seasons.
Yeah. And, Vesa Toskala had a couple good years there.
Steve Shields.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. I mean, there was some okay goaltenders, but when you have nothing to worry about in the goaltending position, you can just go about your business with everyone else.
Right.
I think that's definitely a luxury a lot of teams would love to have. With my number 6 is the current captain of the San Jose Sharks.
Ooh.
And that is Logie Couture, as I like to call him.
Number 5 on my list.
Okay, all right. Yep. So he is the 4th all-time scorer, 507 points in 663 games. And he's kind of always been in the shadow of Pavelski and of Thornton and of Marlowe. And I think it's great that now he is the captain. I think he is the future of the San Jose Sharks. It's hard to say, but I think he's probably maybe the least talented in terms of all those guys ahead of him on that list. He's a phenomenal player. He maybe can skate better than a few of them, but I think Logan Couture is, as the Sharks start to age, I don't think that Logan Couture is he's the ultimate number 1 center, but I do think he's a good player, and he's my number 6.
Yeah, my number 5, very solid centerman, and it's weird too because at 29 we finally see this guy develop into maybe the number 1 center we had. Everybody had expected him to turn into. I know for a while everybody was just waiting for him to explode and be like this point per game player. Drafted in the first round, I think he went 9th overall.
9th overall in 2007.
Yeah, and granted, this season, right? He exploded in the playoffs with, I think he had 14 goals. It was just a ridiculously crazy number, and 70 points this regular season. So I think for a guy who had been toying around 50, 60-ish points for so long, he finally gets over that hump a little bit, and so maybe we might see the offensive explosion now that he's going to be counted on a little bit more now that Little Joe's gone, and Big Joe might be his final hurrah. So
yep, there are 3 players who have scored more points than Logan Couture in the 2007 draft.
3 players.
Can
you name them for me?
Can you name them?
I probably could not.
So the first one is the first overall pick,
right?
Patrick Kane.
Okay.
That one's fair. The second is the 7th overall pick in Jakub Voracek. And there is only one player who has more than Couture's 507 points, and it is Jamie Benn, who was taken in the 6th round, the 5th round. He was taken 129th overall. Just after Austin Smith and Milan Kajtnar, who played 1 game in the NHL.
Boy, how many people passed on Ben?
Everyone.
Yeah, everyone.
I mean, honestly, and then Jake Muzzin went later in that round. And,
did he lay somebody out last night, too? My goodness.
And,
that was fun to watch.
I mean, Nick Bonino went 173 in that draft. Carl Hagelin went 168, and Patrick Maroon went 161. So, I mean, there's quite a few guys left from that draft that are... that were taken late that are still doing really well. I mean, there were other guys that the Sharks could have taken, but I mean, I think Logan Couture was the pick from that draft in terms of where they picked and who was left on the board. You think Keaton Ellerby was taken next by the Panthers, and then Brandon Suter. Ryan McDonough would have also been a pretty solid pick too. But
sure.
Yeah. So he's your number 5. Who was your number 6?
Yeah, my number 6 was Brent Burns.
Okay. Oh, you have him a little lower.
Yeah, a little lower than Logan Couture, and yeah. I just think mostly it's because he spent so much time in Minnesota and took so long to develop into this offensive threat that we see him as right now. I mean, he's only been doing this for 3-4 seasons now. It hasn't been like he hasn't been a guy in San Jose that's been tearing it up for the last decade. So,
in the last 5 years, he's had 60-plus points.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, but it did take him a few seasons when he got to San Jose to do this, considering, he spent so much time in Minnesota, and you think, granted, I know defensemen take a little bit longer to develop and get their stride going, but,
I would say he's had 6 years of pretty prominent. He had 20, the year that he didn't have 60 points before that, in 13-14, he scored 22 goals.
I don't hate it. Don't hate it at all.
That was kind of the year that they were like, is he a forward? Is he a defenseman? And they were kind of toilet.
Right, where he went up the right wing a lot, like Dustin Byfuglien. But the only other thing, too, I think for my one knock on him is just his defensive liability on the back end, because he's just jumping up in the play so much.
Did Drew Doughty get a hold of you? Is that why this is happening?
I actually was waiting for you to say that. I was really hoping you would have, and I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Yeah. He was, it's when Brent Burns was taken by Minnesota, I think there was this like, oh, he can play both positions and all this. And then I think he just kind of fell out of favor in Minnesota. Like they felt like he didn't hit his potential, and they thought that they could, I think that's when they brought in Danny Heatley. Yeah, it was Danny Heatley was traded for Brent Burns. Maybe a little bit more than that. But so Brent Burns, he is my 4th player on my list.
Okay, you're number 4.
But my number 5 is actually the only guy in the top 5, actually the only guy in my top 8 that played before the lockout for the San Jose Sharks.
And he's my number 4.
Owen Nolan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Owen Nolan, even like his point total, he's 568 games, he's got 451 games, or 451 points. But Owen Nolan was just a different kind of player. His prime was also in the mid and late 90s. So you're talking the trap years. And so he definitely, some of those point totals maybe should be adjusted slightly. He also has 934 penalty minutes. This guy is the second all-time in penalty minutes for this organization, but was just your total package, just complete power forward type of player. And he has maybe the most unique goal ever scored in an all-star game.
Dude, one of my favorites.
The point and score on Dominik Hasek. He was the only one who scored on Hasek that year. I think it was in either 98 or 99. Because Hasek was just unstoppable.
Even in an all-star game.
It was in an all-star game, and he was unstoppable. And the only goal scored on him is Owen Nolan on a penalty shot.
No, it wasn't a penalty shot. He was just coming down the
breakaway.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even a breakaway. There was defensemen up the center of the ice. Yeah, he had a little space, but he was just coming down the boards, man, on that blocker side, and just pointed over the glove and just ripped it.
Dude, I remember Hasek afterwards was like, because of course everyone's making a huge deal. Like,
oh, of course.
The Western Conference, which was that back then it was East versus West, and it still is now. But it is now. There was times where it wasn't. They did the like North America versus the world.
Oh right,
they did that a few times. But anyway, so it was West versus East. So the Western Conference, I think, got destroyed by the East. But the talk was that goal. And Dominik Hasek was just like, I do not know what he do. I thought he. I thought he hurt his hand or something. He didn't know he was pointing. But it's you want to see an awesome goal. If you haven't seen Owen Nolan point and shoot, it's amazing. So all right, well that puts Nolan at 5. Brent Burns is my 4. Nolan is your 4.
So we're up to the top 3.
Which I will say for Burns being a little higher, he has won a Norris Trophy.
That's very true.
No one on the Sharks has ever won a Norris. They have. Joe Thornton did win the Art Ross, but I don't think anybody ever won a
No, there's not much hardware on this team.
Yeah. No one ever won a hard or anything like that. So, anyways, your number 3 then. I mean, I think we're going to have the same 3 guys in our top 3. I'm just curious as to, where you drop these guys.
Number 3 is Little Joe.
Okay, yep. Yeah. I have Joe Pavelski at number 3 as well.
Yeah, and maybe if he had stuck around for a few more seasons, maybe that might change his spot, but
I don't think so.
Well, no.
What, like 3 more years? What's he going to... I mean, he sits with 761 points. The 2 guys ahead of him have almost... I mean, Marleau has 320 more points than Pavelski. I think it would take Pavelski maybe more than 5 seasons to get to that total.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I'm not arguing with that, but... yeah, Pavelski. I mean, what can you say? This guy, for as old as he is, he can still freaking score goals, man. I don't know how he's still putting up 40-goal seasons. Like, no big deal. The guy's got sweet hands. He's still pretty fast. I mean, when you think about a guy of his age and how it's become a young man's game, he can still keep up. He can still play. And I'm excited to see what he can do in Dallas. But again, this is just a guy who's been a captain, a leader on this team for so long, and. Yeah, kind of odd to see him wearing another uniform now.
Yeah, he's played for the Sharks his entire career.
Almost made it to 1,000 games, just 40 games short, really. But so it'll be interesting. I mean, he's had success in every aspect of this game with the Sharks, so except no hardware. But yeah,
yep, that would be
number 3.
The one downside. I mean, I'd say in terms of his play in the playoffs, he's always been pretty solid. Definitely nothing to really knock him. I guess one year he had no points in 5 games, but in the year they went to the finals, 23 points in 24 games and 14 goals. So which is a feat in and of itself. If you score more than 10 goals in the playoffs, you did something right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's just so difficult to score goals. I would just my one knock on Pavelski is that he always had Thornton and Marleau around. I mean, other than like the last couple years, but
that's why they call him Little Joe. He's always played second fiddle,
right? Right, and that just kind of he has to be below these guys. And even if he were to go and go back to the Sharks and collect some more points, it's not. He's always going to be third on this list of guys. So with that said, let's go with your number 1. Your number 1.
Okay, Big Joe.
Okay, going Jumbo Joe.
Jumbo Joe. Yeah.
I had the same number 1.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there was a lot of lists. I mean, there's a site called Ranker, and that's usually a good starting place to start thinking about different guys. And no, they actually have Thornton ahead of Marleau. I was looking though, some
Bleacher
list,
Report.
Some list had Marleau ahead of Thornton. Of course, he has more points all time, which I think Thornton will ultimately catch him. I don't think Thornton's going to retire for a few years.
Is he going to be like Jágr, just keep playing till he?
I think so. I really do. He doesn't need speed.
No, when you're smart, you don't need speed, because there are rare guys who can do it just playing slow. You're not like David Backes, where if you can't skate, you're just screwed.
Right.
Now
he has such good hands.
Such good IQ. I mean.
I will say this, and this is the one thing that made me consider Marleau above Thornton. Marleau does have almost 300 more goals than Thornton. I mean, he has 508 goals for this organization, which is first all time. Pavelski's second with 355, and then Thornton at 244 in over 1,000 games.
He's a setup man.
Yeah, and the reason why I go, well, okay, yes, Marleau did score a lot of goals. Several of the seasons where he scored a bunch of goals were early on when the Sharks weren't great, and so not that it's his those seasons don't count, but I guess really he's just scored 25, 30, 40 goals. He's all over the place, but he's a very consistent player. It'll be interesting to see where he actually ends up, because he still hasn't signed anywhere yet.
True, yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But I think when you think of Patrick Marleau, while he has been a really good player for this organization, he's never been anywhere close to the best player in the league. Like he's never been in that conversation. We've never I don't even when his best season he had 86 points. That was in 05-06. I mean, that's playing with Joe Thornton. The most goals he scored was 44 in 09-10. And
well, 09-10 he did come in 9th in the Hart Trophy voting. So he was up there, but
yeah, but that still is okay. You came in 9th for one season where you might, all right, maybe you had a really nice season, but I still wouldn't say, there were players behind him in that voting that were better players. They just maybe didn't have as good of a season, right? So to me, Patrick Marleau never close to the best player in the league, whereas our number one at Joe Thornton, he was absolutely top 3 in the league at one point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And if not, you're talking top 10 for maybe a 10-year stretch, where you'd take Joe Thornton over almost anyone outside of Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. I mean, he was in that conversation to be that third guy.
Yeah, his year when he got traded to San Jose from Boston, he put up 125 points.
Yeah.
Almost 100 assists in that season.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's insane. So, Joe Thornton, our number one San Jose Shark of all time. If you disagree with anyone on this list, you can let us know on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. And from this point out, all of our rankings are just going to be one team, and it'll allow us to put out some other content, as we also want to keep up to date with what's happening in training camp. So stay tuned for that episode later in the week. And that is your San Jose Sharks. Look for the Toronto Maple Leafs next. We'll talk to you guys soon.